Operation Northwoods. It was something that was plotted out during the 1960s, signed by the Joint Chiefs of Staff, where they were going to fake terrorist attacks on American civilians and blame it on the Cubans so we could go to war with Cuba. It involved a bunch of shit, like blowing up a jetliner. They were going to have a drone jetliner and blow it up and say that people died on it. And this was going to get everybody fired up about going to war with Cuba. They were even going to attack Guantanamo Bay. They were going to arm Cuban friendlies to attack Guantanamo Bay so that we would have to go to war with Cuba. This is like our own government. They plotted this out. This is like real shit.
Documents which were only made public in 1997 show that the Department of Defense and the Joint Chiefs of Staff signed off on something called Operation Northwoods, a group of proposals that called for the CIA to commit acts of terrorism in U.S. cities and on U.S. military ships that would be blamed on Castro's Cuba, thereby justifying a U.S. invasion. The term for this type of scenario is a false flag, although
the idea was to create a pretext to show that there was an attack by Cuba on the United States, and the idea was to have U.S. personnel from the CIA and other places secretly create terrorism in the United States. The documents actually said people would be shot on American streets, bombs would be blown up. And again, all this, the evidence would be laid to point the finger at Castro. One other idea was they were going to, they had a very complex plan where they were going to take an aircraft and load it with CIA people that look like college students, fly it over to have it take off from an airport in Miami with a lot of publicity, and then it would quickly, after it got into the air, land at a secret CIA base. At that same time, an identical plane would take off from that CIA base, except this plane would be empty, and it'd be remotely piloted from the ground. It was a drone plane that would be very similar to the passenger plane that had just taken off. And once the plane was over Cuba, there was going to be a tape recorder that would have played a distress call into a microphone saying help were being shot at. And a few minutes later, once the plane was over the Caribbean Sea, after it passed over Cuba, it would have somebody would have pressed a button on the ground, blowing up the plane, and they would have blamed Cuba for killing a plane load of American college students.
Spitballing that you're going to deceive the American people and kill American civilians, and that this is a normal part of the way Nero burnt Rome, Hitler burned the Reichstag, that false flag attacks are real, and that they have happened throughout history.